again with Buy It, Break It, Fix It, back with another tech tip with Colin.
What's going on, guys?
Doing the promised video of the battery, I guess maintenance, storage.
Yep, proper maintenance, storage, going over the basics, safety, that type of thing, and do's and don'ts, essentially.
Okay. Where are we going to start?
Well, I figured we would start with the battery packs themselves here, and where one is a do and where one is a don't. And essentially, I've got a new battery pack here. Okay, it's nice and shiny, brand new. Whenever you actually squeeze it, it's very firm to the touch. And this one is squishy. This one has been damaged or over discharged, essentially, and it can still be used, but it is dangerous to an extent. If it gets any worse than this, to basically where it doesn't, that's when we want to dispose of it. So
Ketchup, for sure.
it is a ketchup pack.
So Colin's just going to explain a little bit about the batteries and some of the information you might find on the battery.
This right here is a typical 3-cell that we sell at the shop here for 1/10 and 1/8 scale size vehicles. 3-cell is always going to be 11.1 volt, and 3-cell is also abbreviated with an S, and the reason they do that is not to get confused with discharge. This is 50C discharge right here. I'll explain exactly what that is here in a couple of minutes. This particular pack, the capacity is 5200 milliamp hour, and that'll also become important when we get to the charge side of things, which plays into the 2C charge rate down here. So all this information is important to know when we're basically picking up a battery and how we're going to be charging it and what vehicle we're
Okay,
going.
Colin, so I buy this battery, it's nice and square and everything looks good on it, and then I run it a couple times and now it's puffed like your ketchup packet you were saying about. Why?
Batteries puff. Most commonly in the car side is generally we have over discharged the pack. We've run it past the low voltage detection on the vehicle, which is a safety cut when we're running. The battery is going to be running and it's going to hit this cliff, and whenever it hits the cliff, most of the time it's going to be a soft cut, and it's going to cut your power anywhere from about 20 to 50%. And you have to realize whenever it cuts the power, that's when we need to stop. The vehicle will still be running, but we need to stop, pull the battery pack out, let it cool off, and charge it. Other reasons it can puff, charging on the wrong chemistry on the charger, or physical damage, and that's actually what happened with this battery pack right here. It ejected from a vehicle, and whenever it ejected, it caught the spur gear, and that's why that particular battery pack is puffed.
So, if you want to tell them how they know when their LiPo is getting low, like whether it be something on the ESC, or like if your ESC doesn't have it, you can have an alarm plugged in here like I run on mine.
Yeah, exactly. So if your ESC does not have a low voltage detection, there are some products out there, voltage alarm products, that will plug into the balance port of the battery pack, and whenever it reaches a certain voltage, they screech very, very loudly. And that's your warning there as well, that you need to stop, pull the battery out, pack out, and let it cool off.
So each, like a 2S and a 3S, are going to have a different alarm setting?
Essentially, with the 2S and 3S, is actually going to be the same setting because it's reading all 3 cells in a 3S at the same time, and both the 2 cells in the 2S at the same time. And whenever those cells actually reach right around 3.3 to 3.5 volts under load, or whenever you're on power, that's whenever that alarm is going to sound. And then as soon as the load is let off, or you let go of the trigger, the voltage will bounce back up to 3.7 volts per cell, or 11.1 volts nominal pack voltage in a 3-cell. In a 2-cell, it would be 7.4.
Right. Okay. Okay, so now you're going to show us the importance of like cells and all their numbers and all that.
Exactly.
Crap on you or not.
Yep. So I pulled a new pack out of the case for an example here, and what I have here is just what we call a cell checker or cell spy, and this device allows us to check the health of the battery pack as well as a couple other things. Down toward the bottom here we have a gauge, and it's reading 47%. And that's 47% charge right now, and that's what we would call storage charge. And that's perfectly safe to store like that months at a time, upwards of years at a time. If we were up around the 80 or 90 or 100% charge rate, That's too high. We're going to damage the pack after about a month of sitting there. So ideally, we want it to be somewhere in the middle, anywhere from about 70% downwards of low storage of about 30%. And we're hitting right in the middle there at 47%.
So it's good.
It's good in storage. We're good to leave that alone for a while. What we have here, the top number, this is 11.54 volts, total pack voltage right now. And that gets some people confused because the pack right here, again, states 11.1. And that's nominal voltage, or voltage whenever the battery pack is depleted, or down right around 13% capacity. When it's fully charged, this is actually going to be reading 12.6 volts. Okay, and if I hit this mode button, we can actually look at each individual cell. Cell number 1 is at 3.85 volts. Cell number 2, 3.846, 8.545. And then basically that gave me my high and my low. It didn't read the middle cell, but it's going to read the balance voltage right here. And that's important to know. This is really where the health of the battery pack comes in handy, where it starts to get puffed if we get out of balance. Okay, I didn't mention that earlier. If we get way out of balance, we can also puff the battery pack. Ideally, we want to be 0.005 or lower. That's in really good shape. 0.030 and under is perfectly fine to use. But when we're at 0.00 and then we have a number here, that's in fantastic shape. That's a perfectly healthy battery pack, or in this case, a brand new. Each cell in here is within the same voltage range as the other one, from 11.1 volt, which is dead, all the way up to 12.6 volt, which is fully charged. So basically, a single cell is going to be 3.7 volts dead, or 4.2 volts fully charged. And 4.2 times 3 is our 12.6 fully charged pack here. So we want to make sure, all three of these cells in here, which are in line, there's 3 cells in here, are in the same voltage no matter if the battery pack is fully charged, half charged, or dead. Right. If we have one that's at 4.2 and one that's at 3.7, that's when we start to get the puff. And
so is that, if you do have one it's that much higher, will it take energy from the higher one or the lower one, or?
No, it will not do that. Now, if it's on a cell checker like this particular one right here from Pulse, it will try to balance those 2 cells out, and it'll do so pretty slowly. Also, if we have it on a charger that is LiPo compatible, most chargers these days have a balance board, and then that's going to balance it out as well, or it's going to try to. So what I've got set up here is the X2 high power from High-Tech. This is a pretty standard charge setup in the hobby here. It's a dual channel charger. That means it'll handle 2 batteries at one time. For this demonstration, we're only going to be using channel 1. And basically it's going to apply across all the chargers, whether it be a single channel, dual channel like we got here, or even a quad channel. And the programming may be different on your charger, but again, the setup as terms of what we need to do for the battery pack is going to be exactly the same. And right now I purposely have it set completely wrong for the battery pack that we're going to be doing right here, so I can go through and set everything back correct for this particular battery pack. If we take a look, we're on Li-ion balance right now, and this is a lithium polymer battery. So the very first thing we have to do is change the chemistry of the charger over to LiPo, or lithium polymer. And there's usually a battery program button on the charger, and we're just going to cycle that until we find what it is. And I think we use our plus and minus to find our battery chemistry. And this one's fancy because it does actually speak to you.
Lead acid, battery voltage meter, battery internal resist system setting, lithium polymer.
And that's exactly what we want right there, lithium polymer battery or LiPo battery. And then we're just going to tap the enter button to select that. Okay. Now we're in LiPo, but it's saying storage. And if we want to charge, we're not going to do a storage. And again, we're going to use our status or plus and minus to find exactly what we want, which is LiPo balance. That's discharge, charge, fast charge, storage. Okay, so on this particular one, it's actually just under charge. They must have done a firmware update on this. Sometimes it says charge, sometimes it says balance. But with the charge, it's going to be doing the balancing as well. Okay. The next setup is our bottom line down here. And the very first thing on the bottom line is the amperage rating, okay? And that plays into the milliamp hour of the battery pack itself. The safest charge rate on battery packs like this, lithium polymer battery packs, whether it be a single cell, 2 cell, 3 cell, all the way up to 6 cell and beyond, is a 1C charge rate. And essentially, this being a 5200 milliamp hour is 5.2 amp hours. Milliamp hour translates to, what is it, 1,000 milliamp hour to 1 amp hour. So this is a 5.2 amp hour right here. So we're actually going to select 5.2 amps. And again, that's going to be our safest charge rate. But if we take a look, it actually says 2C charge rate here on the battery pack, and that may vary from model to model and battery pack manufacturer to battery pack manufacturer. Sometimes they'll be lower, sometimes they'll be higher. So basically we can take this number and apply it to this number here, which is 5.2 amp hours, and multiply it by 2, a factor of 2, which would actually give us a charge rate of 10.4 amps. And what that translates to is basically faster charge time. If this battery pack were dead and we're charging it at 5.2 amps, it would take roughly 1 hour to charge the battery pack. If we charge it at 10.4 amps, or the 2C charge rate, it cuts it roughly in half. It's not going to be exactly a half hour, it might be 35 minutes, it might be a little less, might be a little bit more, but that's essentially, we can charge up to 10.4 amps according to the manufacturer of this battery pack. Again, the safest that I found is a 1C charge rate, so if you don't want to risk it, always just put a decimal after the first number, and that's going to be your charge rate on a battery pack like this here. Back to our charger, it's asking us what voltage this battery pack is. And right now it's set up on a 3.7 volt single cell. Okay, now it's 3.7 volt and 1S. We can't make that like a 7.4 1S. That'd be 7.4 2S. Okay, these two are always locked in together. Okay, so there's no adjusting one number without the other one changing. So right now we're set correctly 11.1 to 11.1 and 3S. And we're just going to hold down the end button, and everything is saved here now. So now what we can do, everything is saved, we can physically hook up the battery pack to the charger. And it doesn't matter in which order, if we hook up our charge and discharge lead first or a balance plug first. It does not matter. The charger does not care, the battery does not care, just as long as we hook both up. And again, black to black, red to red. These are keyed, you cannot mix them up. Same thing with the Dean's connectors like we showed you in the soldering video, you can't mix them up. And then our balance plug is going to plug into our board here, and printed here is 2S, 3S, 4S, 5S, and 6S. Now that's going to be pretty standard. There are some differences in boards across the industry, but for this purpose, in this video, we're just going to use a simple XH board. That's the style of connector here, and we're going to be looking for the 3S, which is 3-cell LiPo. Okay, and this is just going to plug in. It's keyed as well. You cannot plug it in backwards. It physically will not plug in backwards. So we're going to plug it in just like that. Okay. Now that we've got the settings set on our charger, we've got everything hooked up here. We're just going to hold down the start button or the enter button, and it's going to ask us to confirm our settings. And we went through our whole settings and everything is right, and now it is charging. What we've got from top left to right here, LP, that stands for LiPo, and 3S, that's for the 3-cell lithium polymer battery. This right here is our charge rate, and it's slowly ramping up to the 5.2 amps that we put it at. And you'll see this fluctuate throughout the charge, especially towards the end of the charge. This will start to go down quite a bit. But right now it's checking out the battery, and it'll slowly start to ramp up to that 5.2 amps. Next we have our voltage. And again, this is at 11.55 volts, and it goes back to fully charged. This is going to read closer to 12.6. And whenever it gets close to 12.6 or even 12.6, it'll stay there for a while. And essentially what it's doing is it's making sure the balance of the battery pack is exactly within spec. Some chargers will finish out the charger quicker, some will stay there and try to get the balance as close as possible. With this particular one, I believe it's pretty efficient and it balances out pretty quickly. Again, this is the first setting that we put on there, LiPo, and it's on the charge setting, which is also balancing at the same time. And then we have our timer right next to it. It's been on this charge for 1 minute and 15 seconds roughly. This will default from the charger at 120 minutes or 2 hours. So if the battery doesn't finish within that time frame, the charger automatically shuts down, which is just a safety feature. You can adjust that. I do not recommend adjusting it, just because again, it's just a safety cut and it's a good thing to have on board. Lastly, what we have here is our milliamp hour counter. And we can look at this kind of as the health of the battery pack as well. If the battery was close to dead when we put it on the charger and we let it charge up to 12.6 volts and we take a look at our milliamp hour counter towards the end of the charge and it reads close to 5200 milliamp hour, then we know the battery pack is good. Now it'll never get to 5200 milliamp hour, or it shouldn't at least. If it does, that means we over discharge the pack. But if it's in the 5000 to 5100 range, we're in good shape. So that's the basics of charging and the overview of everything here. If we want to stop the charge for any reason, again, we have our stop button, the square right here. We can just tap that, it's stopped. It's okay to disconnect at that point right there. Now, one bit of safety advice, I've been guilty of it, and I think everybody in the shop here has been guilty of it. It's really easy to do. If we have our battery pack plugged into the charger, we never ever ever want to plug the charge lead from the charger, because these are just banana plugs right here. You know, they pull out, so we can put different charge leads right into here. But if we have our battery pack plugged into our charge lead, and these two banana plugs come in contact, boom, that's it. We've just short-circuited our battery and potentially can cause a fire, but will definitely damage the battery pack if that's the case. So just a word of warning, never unplug the charge whip or the charge adapter from the charger with a battery plugged into it.
I am guilty of that.
Yeah, I think we all are.
That happened and it sparked on me real quick. It was crazy.
Yeah.
So that wasn't when we were doing the previous video, and I'm just going to leave this part in, but I thought there was something we were going to touch on. You remember what I edited it out of the last video, and I was like, oh, let's make sure we get that in there because, oh, snipping.
Yes, snipping we were talking about when we were soldering. If we happen to go to cut off this Traxxas connector here and say put on a Dean's or any other number of connectors, we don't want to cut through both lines at the same time. Again, we've all been guilty of it here, and it creates a nice light show and scares everybody half to death in the shop here. Again, it's the same thing as direct shorting the battery.
Right.
So again, just a safety thing. Clip one wire at a time, and then if you're just learning, take the other wire and rubber band it to the other side of the battery pack so you have one wire way over here and then your working lead over here somewhere. Real quick, going back to discharge rating, I did not touch on it, but basically discharge rating is its burst power, and it ties into the milliamp hour. This is a 5200 milliamp hour battery with a 50C discharge, and basically what that means is it can discharge 50 times its capacity, or 5.2 amps. And basically, you need to get a calculator out here. We'll take 5.2 amps and we'll multiply it by 50C. And where's our zero at? There it is. And that gives us a burst of 260 amps that this battery pack can produce, essentially. And that's important for any high demand vehicle. Say we'll take the new Traxxas eRevo 2.0 that just released. That will pull a lot of amperage off a battery pack, and it's important to have a battery pack that can back that up. Anything that I think Traxxas 35C or higher, or their battery packs which are 25C or higher.
Okay, so just so you know, this part here was my idea.
Yeah. What we got here is a bit of safety equipment, and it's for storage of the LiPo batteries. We've touched on the storage of the battery packs a little bit earlier in the video, and where we want it to be, anywhere below that. I believe I said 70% and like right around 30% or 20%. Anywhere off of 100% and above 20%, we're in good shape to pretty much let these battery packs sit for months at a time or upwards of years at a time. But physically storing them somewhere is a question we get a lot here at the shop. And the safest bet is a LiPo safe or a LiPo bag or a LiPo sack. And there's many different sizes. We've got a couple of small ones right here. We've also got a square one right here, which is a safety pack for a car. And essentially with this, we can fit either two of these 3 cells or a large 4 cell, something along those lines. And essentially, the battery pack just falls right inside here. We can actually have our leads coming out if we wanted to. And some people actually charge inside the bag just in case anything were to happen. But storage, whenever you're putting them away for extended periods of time, it's always good to have them in some form of fireproof or fire-resistant container. And that's exactly what the lipo bags do.
Yep.
They've definitely helped me out. I have probably 2 or 3 personally. I always keep my batteries in here when not in use, and yeah, just a good bit of safety advice.
I'm sure when the fire inspector comes in, because the house is burned down, if the lipo is in a bag, it might make a difference. I doubt it, but it might make a difference.
Yeah, legality, I'm not going to get into that.
They have burned down houses.
They have. We've had customers who have burned down their houses or garages, and it's very, very unfortunate.
Or another thing, a health issue is a lot of the smoke.
Yeah,
Didn't you just have a customer here within the last year that was hospitalized because of inhaling?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, it was one of our part-timers. He spent a couple of days in the hospital. He had a lipo fire in his basement, and thankfully he got it out, but it did do some damage to some of his RC equipment, and he did inhale some of the fumes, and that put him in the hospital for a few days. So
be careful with
very
your
nasty
lipos.
stuff.
Yep. All right, so now you know everything you need to know about batteries. So smoke shows, no nothing. So I'm not sure what we're gonna do next as far as another tech video. I'm sure there'll be something we'll come up with, but if you have any ideas or any requests, just comment below. Anything else to add?
No, I think we pretty much covered it, but like you said, any questions, comments, concerns, definitely let Ben know on his channel or on the Facebook page. I'm always lurking. So yeah, just tag me there, or again, ask Ben and he'll relay the question to me. So.
All right, well that's going to be it for this video. I guess that's it. Still no outro? Not yet?
No, haven't come out with an outro yet.
All right, remember, be good to people, people will be good to you. Ben, out.